What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Speak Up Sports Podcast with Cass, Christian Shaw. What's going on, fellas?
Oh,
What's up, man? God damn.
Everything good?
Agency crazy, ain't it?
Happy New Year in the NFL officially at 4 p.m. Eastern. We kicked off the official start of the 2024 NFL football season. So with that, since Monday, we've been seeing nothing but signings, trades, releases.
Yeah.
I mean, we're fully into the free agent frenzy going into the 2024 season. Really, right before we hopped on today, we just had another bombshell signing, surprise signing with Calvin Ridley going over to the Tennessee Titans, and joining Will Levis and the boys over there. But to start, the thing that kind of kicked everything off, we talked about it last week. We kind of started off with the quarterbacks. And where some of the free agents, quarterbacks, or the quarterbacks that we thought were going to be available, and where they were going to land. And Russell Wilson, obviously, he was the first guy that we knew to be released or was going to be available. We knew that since middle of the season. We knew that since before the season, really. But Russell Wilson ended up with Pittsburgh. I know I thought that was not going to be a place that he ended up landing. But how did you guys feel about that now that Russ is, well, technically, it's not official yet because the Broncos technically haven't released him yet, but he obviously will be with the Steelers. So how do you guys feel about that?
I think him being, allowed to go visit teams before everybody else could definitely played in his favor a little bit. It's reported that his meeting with Mike Tomlin was like over 5 hours or so, and it went very well. And that's what
I'm not going for that bullshit.
Yeah, but I mean, I wonder what all they were talking about for real. And of course, they said a lot of it wasn't even about football, which makes sense because that's Mike and that's Russ. You know what I mean? Like I could see that. I mean, it's a $1.2 million deal at the same. I mean, we talked about it last week. Like you're paying nothing for him. And if everything that Steelers been saying this offseason is you want to bring in somebody to compete with Kenny Pickett, you're not fully sure about Kenny Pickett, but you're not fully done with him either. So this was kind of the perfect little bet, to make about, bring some competition in. You're not tied to Russ. Kenny Pickett he can still, as it might not happen, but he can still progress and be good, and it's possible. So I mean, I like it for the Steelers. I like it for Russ too, because if he does get a chance to start, that's a good team to at least make your name and get to the playoffs. Try to get to the playoffs. Have a good chance of getting to the playoffs to at least try to get a contract somewhere next year and say, hey, we were in the playoffs again. I contributed. More surprised about not really surprised, but more about what they're going to do at receivers now outside of George and Pat. Well, we'll talk about that later, but that's where I'm at with it. I think, yeah.
We will definitely talk about that later. But what say you, Chris? Speak up, man.
Let Russ cook.
No.
Cook.
That's the thing. You don't need to do too much.
I mean, when you really think about it, I mean, where else was he gonna go? I mean, every other team that probably needed a quarterback is in rebuild mode. They're not trying to bring him in. There's no reason to bring him in. I mean, Pittsburgh. I
wonder what that Giants meeting was about. You know what I mean? I mean, they were the first to meet with him. So
true.
It's like,
but I just feel like this probably was his best opportunity he got. And like Shah was saying, that meeting that they had, yeah, he was telling him, hey man, look, all that extra shit you bring in, if you want an opportunity, I'll give you an opportunity to play. But all that other stuff, this is our culture. This is what we built. I mean, he went to a Broncos where they had two different cultures. You had Nat Hackett, then you bring in Sean Payton. So that was all over.
Having new ownership.
Right. And Pittsburgh, I mean, if I'm not mistaken, they only had 3 coaches.
They're the definition of stable.
Right. So that meeting was more so I could believe, like you said, I could believe they wasn't really talking about football like that. It's like, what do you want out of this situation?
Yeah.
What are you hoping to gain from us? Like, what can stuff like that. So, I mean, it's okay. It's an okay deal for Pittsburgh. They're not really paying him much. It's still crazy to me that, Broncos had to take that motherfucking hit. I mean, I know they're going to try to, split that thing up, but still that shit crazy. But when you really think about it, I mean, there's no other team he could have really went to if he actually won the opportunity to actually play.
Yeah. What were your thoughts on it?
Oh,
You like it or you
except
like?
for the Falcons? I mean, he could have went there, ain't that right?
No.
I don't know where Russ, I don't know where Russ could have been where, it's a guaranteed success. But you might be lucky that Deshaun Watson, just is a pumpkin, and he went from star to big freak to pumpkin as a quarterback. Then, of course, that might be that. If that's the case, then you have the third best quarterback in your division.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, with that being said, it hasn't necessarily hindered the Steelers thus far, but honestly, one of the conversations, I'm sure they had a long conversation because it's probably a situation where Mike Tomlin is putting his neck on the line. Like, if this doesn't work out, especially if they don't make the playoffs, which, if we're talking about it today, and we always say, I feel like every year the Steelers aren't going to do it, and they end up sneaking in. I can't even see them being, we've talked about how Mike Tomlin has never had a losing season. I'd be putting the house down on them having a losing season this year. Like,
really,
I wouldn't be surprised if it's a terrible season.
Interesting.
And I imagine that some of the conversation also had to do with. I think that the Giants, that meeting, that conversation may have had to do a little bit with, this is going to be a competition here with Daniel Jones. It's not going to be you're just coming here to get the job. That was also a destination where when he originally asked to be traded from the Seattle Seahawks, that was one of the teams that was on the destination, as well as the New Orleans Saints with Sean Payton. And it's funny how that ended up turning out for him. But I don't know. It's been reported that the Steelers and him, they had a conversation, and it's supposed to be like a quarterback competition. I think that he was assured the job from the jump, and because Mike Tomlin also has that respect. He understands stature, stuff like that. So I just feel like it, and like you said, obviously following the news of that, we're thinking that he's going there with George Pickens and Deontay Johnson. Now we find out Deontay Johnson is out of Pittsburgh and is getting traded to the Carolina Panthers. Mm-hmm. So now it's just George Pickens over there. You've got Calvin Austin, who hasn't done too much. Obviously, hard to say with quarterback play, but it's I don't know. Yeah. I don't know what the direction the Steelers are going. They were already in a desperate position a few years back when they obviously reached for Kenny Pickett. He was somebody that they were able to justify it because he went to Pittsburgh. He's been in the building. They see him every Saturday because they play at Heinz Field, stuff like that. But I don't know. A lot of these teams are in a desperate position, I feel like.
It's
only
wild.
I can say, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was about to say, only thing I can say is maybe they just trying to get back to the old Pittsburgh way. I mean, they building defense. They got a running back, run game, play defense. That's what they used to do. So I mean, maybe they okay with not having a difference maker as you would want at a quarterback. Maybe that's why they're okay with let me get rid of Deontay Johnson. We still have a good receiver. We still have a good tight end. And we got a running back.
I just think that was a cheap move.
They got more they got more for Chase Claypool than they got for Deontay Johnson. So
it's a cheap move. They were just
we already know Deontay Johnson wanted to be out of there.
I mean,
they say he wanted to be out of there. And now the reports are that he was a headache and XYZ.
Yeah.
Not so sure that that's 100% true. We did see some of the dumb shit that happened on the field. Don't think that in the locker room, necessarily he was like that, but maybe we'll find out some stuff. But aside from, enough about Russ. We've talked about Russ ad nauseum for the past few weeks, I feel like. And obviously it's going to be a wait and see. But the next biggest news, obviously the biggest free agent move this season was Kirk Cousins going to the Atlanta Falcons. Yeah. One that this nigga here thought was not going to happen. So we got to get on his ass.
I thought he was going back to Minnesota. I really thought he was going back to Minnesota. Clearly the fact that it happened like this, he been gone. Like, okay, I get it. I really thought he was going back to Minnesota though, which, get into it. He got the 4-year, go ahead. Do your spill.
Donald got that money, boy.
He did get the money. He did
All
get the
right,
money, but yeah,
man.
it's Kirk Cousins officially Kirko. They actually just dropped their
Yeah.
Twitter post about it about 5 minutes ago. He's
ATL
officially
Kirko.
signed and signed, sealed, and delivered to Atlanta and the Falcons. He gave his farewell speech to the Vikings earlier today as well. But like I said, he was the prize free agent, probably the number one free agent, just in free agent in general. He's clearly the number one free agent quarterback this year. 35 years old, coming off an Achilles injury. He's kind of had a up and down career. Obviously, he started off in an awkward position between getting drafted with Robert Griffin III. Then Washington didn't want to commit to him, which I'm sure it's kind of hurt them over the past few years.
Yeah.
Obviously, the Vikings didn't want to commit to him either, as well, maybe not long term at a certain amount of money. And we'll see how that goes for the Vikings this year because, technically they don't, in most people's eyes, they don't have a quarterback, even though they signed one, which we'll get into. But what did you guys think of that and, what the outlook looks like for the Falcons moving forward?
Yeah, I'll start. With this though, when more and more came out, where this decision really stemmed from last year when he tried to do that extension with them, and it didn't get, or not last year, maybe 2 years ago when they tried to get a longer extension done and it didn't get done, and then the fact that he comes out in the last year of his contract and then actually gets injured, for the first time, pretty much. I think it all stemmed from that because he's like, at that point, you're looking at it, you're like, see, like, that's why I tried to lock it up. Like, I didn't want to be in this position, so I think it was a little bit of, he still loves the organization and loves everybody there, of course, but it was a little bit of like, all right, let me look somewhere else. And I think that process has been going on for a while now. As far as what it means for the Falcons, I was wondering what the details would be. And of course, on surface, you look at 4 years, 180 million, which Chris, you called in our chat. You look at it, it's like, damn. But if the details matter, so you really look at it, it's like a 2+1. It's like you're getting bulk of it in those first 2 years. You have it out in that last year, and you can eat some cap in that third year if you do end up releasing, if it all goes to shit or whatever. So with it being structured like that, I don't hate it. And it still gives you room to either grab somebody in the draft and develop them behind a good quarterback, whether that's this year or next year, and just move forward like that. So, I don't hate it. But it wasn't what I was expecting, though. I will admit that. I thought he was going back to Minnesota. I thought he was going to do that. But clearly Minnesota had other plans, and they got to it quickly with their move. So, Chris,
Speak up, Chris.
I guess my thing is for y'all, y'all was kind of in like a no man's land because I feel like if y'all would have been maybe pick 6, y'all would have attempted to trade up, get a quarterback of the future quarterback that you might actually really want. I think this speaks more volumes of Justin Fields because that's what everybody was talking about. Everybody's clamoring about him, and he's still on the Bears. He still haven't went nowhere. Everybody's making other moves, leaving him on the wayside. But you getting an actual veteran quarterback that actually is going to actually throw the ball, and this gives you opportunity to see what you actually have in the offense. Because last 2 years, which most people are clamoring about, not using Kyle Pitts to his full extent. Jokes with Jonnu Smith with tight end 1 last year, but Kirk Cousins give you option of like actually understanding, do we want to pay our skill guys when they come up?
Yeah. And I think the whole thing is tempering expectations because, all the noise throughout the offseason has been, the Falcons are a quarterback away, which I never agree with. I do not agree with that. It's a lot more that has to be done before you're able to really be in that contention, argument. And then a move like this gets made and it's like, they got their quarterback. It's win now mode. Like, I don't like that. You know what I mean? I feel like that's getting people worked up, getting expectations up to where they aren't, like what's not going to happen. This team is not going to, as currently constructed, it's not going to make that much noise in the playoffs probably. You'll win some games. You might win the division. You better win the division. But like as far as like advancing, getting to a conference championship, getting to the Super Bowl, I feel like that's a bit far fetched right now. I mean, especially going in with technically a second time head coach, but new coordinators, brand new coordinators on both sides of the ball. Like it's a lot that still has to be answered for this team. So I don't think necessarily, you got Kirk, and of course his playoff records get brought up. He's 1-3 or 1-4 in the playoffs, and his only win was that Minnesota Miracle against the Saints.
No, that was actually whatchamacallit.
That was Case Keenum.
Case Keenum.
Well, his only win was a win against the Saints, though, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
No.
Well, yeah, his only win is against the Saints and Drew Brees. So it's like a lot. Quarterbacks aren't wins on a quarterback stat, but you kind of tie it in. That's what everybody's arguing anyway. But then you get the comparisons between Kirk and Dak that look kind of the same. So Kirk is there. He's in that mix. He's in that top 11, 12 quarterbacks, which is not bad to have, I guess. And we'll see what happens.
Wins aren't a QB stat until you really want to shit on somebody. That's
until you want to use it. Yeah.
But it goes both ways. Wins, in my opinion, wins are a quarterback stat, but it's just this is how statistics should be in general. There's always nuance to it. Of course, we know Tom Brady has like 100 more fucking playoff wins than everybody else in the world. But there's also nuance to it. There's nuance. There's the fucking Tuck rule where even him himself thought that's a fumble. Okay, so we should have lost that game. There's other games where, championship games, Tom Brady has been absolutely terrible. They won. The Bucks year when Aaron Rodgers folded in that last minute, and then when they went to the Super Bowl, Tom Brady was terrible the entire second half and threw 2 picks, kept them in the game. They really did not do much aside from the game sealing drive, and then whatever they did before the first half. And once again, it just worked out for them. The team, some people made plays. Patrick Mahomes. The Chiefs weren't good against the Ravens in the second half. The Ravens pretty much dominated the Chiefs the entire second half. If you go back and watch the game, it came down to fumbling on the goal line and then throwing a pick in the end zone. So there's nuance to everything. So with that being said, I said last week the tea leaves told us that it was going to be Kirk the entire time, as long as the Vikings didn't pony up something and he didn't have to move. Based on everything that they do, they've been moving, the moves that they've made over the past few years. To Chris's point, that is one benefit of Kirk outside of just on the field play, is now you're actually bringing in a true professional, something that they did have with Matt Ryan, and I'm sure over the past few years they're like, Taylor Heineke, Desmond Ridder. It's not to say, not talking specifically on field play, but in terms of how Matt Ryan probably controlled that organization, the way that his leadership and his aura was, I'm sure Kirk Cousins has a lot of that. Even if it's 80% of it, 75% of it, I'm sure it's more than Taylor Heineke, definitely more than Marcus Mariota and Desmond Ridder. And that was, I also have talked about it, the parallels between the Colts and the Falcons. And that was even a similar sentiment from the Colts when Phillip Rivers retired, and then they went from Phillip Rivers to Carson Wentz. That was a huge, the locker room, the way that Carson Wentz carried himself was a big reason why Carson Wentz did not return to Indy. It wasn't purely because of his play. Some of it was, but he had a pretty good season. And even the Colts, even with how the season ended up turning out with Matt Ryan, I promise you, they would never have went back with Carson Wentz, and they would do the same shit all over again, just because of how it helped the rest of the team, even though they were going through turmoil and whatnot.
Yeah.
So I like the move. At the end of the day, you're in a division where it's up for the grabs. There's no dominant quarterback. There's no dominant team right now. Like you said, it is about tempering expectations. I think for both sides, AFC and NFC South, those were the 8 teams that had the easiest schedules last year. So, Texans, Colts, Titans, Jacksonville, which they're Jacksonville's
we'll
Jacksonville
talk
as they've been.
About them.
But Bucks, all of those teams are going to have to temper expectations because the teams that they play a lot of backup quarterbacks last year. So this year is going to be a lot different. I do really feel I do, and I also mentioned, Terry is in a position where he's got to make some noise as a GM, which I think could, if it does go wrong, I think that we're going to be able to go back to that and be like, yo, last year should have been all about the young development, figuring out your pass rushers, figuring out where you are as a team because you had a young quarterback. Now you're kind of accelerating your timeline. So we'll see how that goes. But for your last point that you mentioned about having new coordinators, I do think that's another benefit because now you have Kirk that can help Zach Robinson with his play calling. Sure. Like, yo, like, listen, this is working. This is great. This sequence of plays is, the sequence of plays would be better in XYZ situation and stuff like that. So
I'm
that
excited
could also
to see
help
it,
with the young guy moving forward.
Yeah. And then, I mean, at the end of the day, like, you look at not even just the division, the NFC as a whole. I mean, what is Kirk? Probably behind Matthew Stafford. He's in that conversation with those next few guys.
And he was just about to will the Vikings into the playoffs. I mean, they were on a roll before he tore his stuff up.
Yeah, so if you're Terry, make that splash. You got a top 5 quarterback in the conference, most likely. So, I mean, hey, and I'm excited to see what it does to Drake, Bijan. Like, I'm excited to see how it kind of unfolds. And
we'll probably see some career. We might not see career year maybe from Pitts himself because he had such a good rookie season in terms of pure statistics. But I feel like his touchdowns might jump, his receptions might jump. Maybe not his yardage itself because I think he went for 1,000 his first year.
Yeah, he went 1,000.
He might hit right around 1,000 because I do think their other signing with Darnell Mooney is going to be a huge pickup, as well as I do think that we're going to see a career year from Drake London. And then on top of that, you got Bijan catching it out the backfield, and we'll see how they continue to do the running back split between him and Algier. But it's going to be interesting to see. The offense will be fun at the very least,
Yeah.
And also one thing for all of our audience, for all of our listeners, the biggest thing that Cass mentioned earlier is the most important thing when you're thinking about free agency: structure. All of those numbers that we typically see, it's XYZ signed 4 years. If you really peep, it said a lot of times it says up to XYZ amount. It's signed for 4 years, up to 180 million. Pay attention to the details, like he said. And when you're starting to look at structures, especially like, for example, this Kirk Cousins contract, the first 2 years is also the 2 years where none of those young guys are due for contracts, aside from AJ Terrell, which they're probably going to get done this offseason. So that it also lines up to where it's not hurting them in the future when you do need to sign these guys and you're not in a position where you have to start offloading contracts and stuff like that. So keep that in mind when you, especially these first couple days of free agency. I know obviously stuff has been going on since Monday, but today is officially the first day. Really, like a couple hours ago is officially the first, the start of free agency. But I think ultimately I do think that it's going to be good and it's going to be a sight to see. But one thing that, last week I thought that it was pretty much going to happen. And I did say that if that happened, Justin Fields was going to go to Minnesota. And Chris alluded to it earlier. I mean, the biggest loser out of all of this has got to be Justin Fields. Like, the NFL has told everybody, and last year, I mean, what a complete 180 from last year. This time last year, it was we just got DJ Moore, really just right around the time as this is when the trade went down. Just got DJ Moore, just got a boatload of picks. Justin Fields is going to be an MVP candidate, this, that, and the third. It's up for Justin Fields. You go 365 days later, or 366, because I guess leap year. Justin Fields, has the NFL not said we think you're ass? Like,
it's such bad luck, honestly.
And it sucks for him.
Because if the Panthers don't fall off the cliff last year, they're not even in this position to pick top 1, 2. Like, if the Panthers win 6-7 games, like was expected of them to do, they're still rolling with Justin Fields next year. They're going to have the 9th pick where they're at, and just roll with Justin Fields next year and just continue to build around him. So it's really bad luck that the Panthers fell off a cliff after that trade, and you're in the spot to. You think they would have still moved off of him if they had?
We might see Kirk Cousins there, honestly.
I mean, they had the cap space.
They had the cap space, and Eberflus would have been in a position because I don't, who knows? You never know.
Yeah, but it sucks for Justin. I mean, but at the same time, I don't think it's over for him. He's still 24. You know what I mean? So he'll get another opportunity somewhere at some point. Probably not this year, maybe next year or whatever. However it shakes out. I don't think he's a terrible quarterback, but it's a lot that he has not shown in these 3 years. And 3 years is enough. 3 years starting. I know he came in kind of in the middle of his first season, but pretty much 3 years starting, you get a good look at him and what he is. And I guess the league is like, I don't know what the Bears are asking for either, so I don't know. But
I mean, at this point, the value is done. I mean, Sam Darnold just got signed to the Minnesota Vikings. That was a team that I said last week that Justin Fields was going to go to, either between the Falcons or Minnesota. So that option seems to be off the table. They gave him a $10 million contract, even though it's a 1 year. But that's not backup money necessarily. It's not necessarily sign or starter money. But
same thing for Gardner Minshew.
That seems to be more so like we're going to trade up, which the Vikings have. I mean, it's been reported that the Vikings were willing to trade 3 first-round picks to get Anthony Richardson last year. So they've been trying to make this move for a minute. But like you said, Minshew going to the Raiders. We had Jameis Winston. He went to the Browns. My boy Tyrod, which I was sad about. I wanted Tyrod to come to the Colts, be back up, but he went to New York Jets. Mariota even got a job and went to the Washington Commanders, whatever they're going to change their name to. But even the biggest thing is like, not only did basically damn near every team or opportunity that you think he could possibly go where he's going to be, whether it's unquestioned starter or at least competing, because Pittsburgh is another team that was floated. The rest of the people that everybody was swearing that he didn't have help, Darnell Mooney comes out. He's one of the first. Last week I thought he was going to be probably the first signing. I thought he was going to go to a different team, but he ends up with the Falcons on a pretty great contract for him to most people, because they're like, who the fuck is Darnell Mooney? He didn't do anything last year,
pretty much.
Oh, he only had 400 yards. Well, he ends up being the first guy to, I think, was he the first receiver to go off the board? I think, Pittman doesn't necessarily count because he was a free agent, franchise tagged.
Technically, Gabe Davis, but yeah.
And Gabe Davis. So those were the first 2 receivers to go off the board. And then on top of that, Luke Getsy, the offensive coordinator that everybody saw and said was ass, he immediately gets a job and is the OC for the Raiders. So, I mean, it's not optics-wise, it's not over, like you said, it's not over for him. Optics-wise, it's a bad look, like very terrible.
Yeah.
What say you, Chris?
Terrible. Just bad, man. I mean, it's just reports out there. The reports out there now for him is a backup role somewhere. And that is bad. Like, it sucks for him, I guess. I mean, I can't really say nothing, because honestly, when he came out of college, I thought he was gonna be good. I thought he was fine. But
I thought he was too.
Obviously, we didn't do our homework, because it's not good at all. And like you said, it's just the aspect of the narrative is he never had weapons, and then you get DJ Moore, and then like you just said, Darnell Mooney signs a good contract, and he's gonna play, and he's gonna make some plays, and it's like, damn, this is what you did have to work with, and it's like, nah. So,
and a good tight end, Cole Kmet is pretty nice.
Facts.
Yeah, I mean, I don't like we said, throughout the season, especially coming off this season where I forgot the number of quarterbacks that played, but so many backups got a chance to play. He'll land somewhere. He'll have an opportunity, but it's not looking good for him this season.
And when you start, because like Chris said, they started talking about him backups. When you start getting suggestion that you're going to be Anthony Richardson's backup, who is a fucking rookie, basically, it's bad. It's bad. Like, golly. Yeah, Anthony Richardson ain't played but 4 games. Damn, really like 3 games, and they're already saying you can't even go in there and compete with him. Like, it's backup. Like, no question. It sucks for him, but outside of that, it'll be interesting to see, because what are they going to do? At this point, are they going to wait till the draft to see, maybe somebody gets hurt?
They have to wait you have to wait for the draft at this point, right? Like, you got to, if these teams strike out like the Vikings, they could still take a swing for it if they can't move up or something like that. Maybe. I don't see it happening in the next few weeks.
I think it would make sense for the Vikings, but obviously that's in division. The Raiders, I still think it would make sense. The New York Giants, I think it would make sense. But
Splash, Chris. Hold on. Joe Flacco to the Colts.
I like
Damn,
that.
Justin Field can't even get the backup job, bro. Come on, bro. Come on, bro.
Yes, sir. 1 year worth of see, look, there it is, worth up to $8.7 million.
That shit got like 7 million incentives.
Yeah, but I mean,
Probably.
shit. Now that we talked about it, I mean, it's great that you said that during this because here's another quarterback that just went off the board, and it's like the opportunities are dwindling more and more. Damn, Joe Flacco about to come, nigga. No, I'm just joking. But he's so trash. But it's tough for him. It's very tough. And one more thing that I want to add, not to the Justin Fields, but to the Falcons side of it. I honestly think the other thing that goes that this Kirk Cousins signing kind of says to me is how they feel about the quarterback class, how they feel about the guys outside of maybe the top two, because we've seen that Jaden Daniels is, some people have been saying he's going to. I still don't believe he's going to, even though, they're trying to put the two and two together.
They're pushing it.
They're trying to put the 2 and 2 together. Marcus Mariota signed to Washington. Well, to use my own team, Gardner Minshew was signed last year. Do Gardner Minshew and fucking Anthony Richardson play alike? Does Joe Flacco and Anthony Richardson play alike? So, don't read too much into it. It could be a sign of something. It could be a whole lot of nothing.
I would say even at this point, Marcus Mariota is closer to Drake than he is to Jaden. If we're really looking at it,
it's going to be interesting, to see. I still think that it's the 1 and 2 are set. I think like I said when we did our mock, and we'll do another one here in a few weeks. But I think that Jaden Daniels is going to be the one to fall, and I do think that JJ McCarthy. I don't think the Falcons like JJ McCarthy. I do think the Vikings like JJ McCarthy. And so that was like the biggest thing takeaway for me. I'm like, the Falcons clearly don't like, for them to not even, maybe try to move up. Cause I mean, you could have moved up and still got Kirk if you wanted to. These guys don't necessarily have to start, but we'll see.
Before we get off quarterbacks, let's talk about your trade, your boy, Mac Jones.
I was just about to say that was another quarterback, backup, but Justin Fields still where he is. But
Mac Jones traded
quick
to the Jaguars, real quick. Now, we talked about it. I think we talked about it a few times. Like, he's going to be a backup. Of course, you have your thoughts on it about how close they are. Him and Trevor, actually are. And if you put up the stats, I get it.
Put up the stats. He's been better than Trevor for the most part. For the most part. Do we think that he's better than Trevor? No, but
I think the biggest thing, Matt Jones, man, he do some stupid shit sometimes, and it should be like, what are you doing? But that's just when I watch him, he just be doing some crazy shit.
This thought just came to my head, and you guys probably not going to agree. Obviously not in terms of style, Mac Jones is who everybody thinks Justin Fields is. Not saying that they think that he could be the MVP, but the person that's actually been handed a bad hand, the person that's actually had no offensive help, the person that's actually had, these random ass, stupid ass defensive coaches being his offensive coordinator, and you switch in and having 3 OCs.
But he got the gold, and stuff like that. He had the gold.
I mean, he had the gold. Defensive coach for sure, but at the end of the day, obviously his first year, he was really good with Josh McDaniels. They lose Josh McDaniels. They bring in Patricia as the OC. Then they bring back Billy O'Brien, which, I mean, if we all know Bill O'Brien's track record with in the NFL, obviously he got his claim to fame in the NFL with Tom Brady and the Patriots and stuff like that. A lot of people remember him and Tom going back and forth. But, like, he got a little bad rap in New England before then that not many people talk about. So it's, Mac Jones has been dealt a bad hand. But I do think if any spot, if Doug Peterson's supposed to be a QB whisperer like they say, I also think that Doug Peterson is probably going to be fired at the end of the season, but we'll see.
I can see that coming for sure.
So once again, Mac Jones probably dealt a bad hand, but it's funny that Mac Jones was even was sought out seemingly more than Justin Fields too. Shit.
Yeah. So I mean, and they traded him for a 6th round pick. So what the hell is Zach Wilson going to go for it? Like, I saw somebody tweet cash consideration. You know how they do that shit in the NBA. Yeah. That's what's gonna have to be.
Seriously though, is somebody gonna take a shot on him? I mean, shot at it is both of them. I mean, we hadn't even really talked too much about Zach Wilson. He's another person that everybody feel like Justin Fields. I feel like he's been held a bad hand. Obviously, he's got some good teammates and a good team, but you know, it seems like they don't know what the fuck they got going on over there with the Jets. Now all of a sudden, their starting quarterback is a vice presidential candidate and all this shit. So. You guys want to talk about that?
Too much. Not really.
But yeah, fuck Aaron Rodgers. But yeah. Moving on to the rest of the free agency, man. We've got a lot of big signings, a lot of big trades. We got Carlton Davis going to the Lions, being traded there. We got Deontay Johnson, as we mentioned a couple times, being traded for a pick in Dante Jackson. The rare player-for-player trade. We had Jerry Jeudy getting traded to the Browns. My boy Mixon, Joe Mixon. Well, let me not say my boy because he's had some trials and tribulations that are kind of nasty. But Joe Mixon going to the Texans as well, getting traded there. Brian Burns getting traded finally to the New York Giants.
Got a check, too.
And another thing that we saw with the free agency, kind of I don't want to say return of the running back contract, but we did see a lot of running backs. I mean, damn near every running back got signed. We talked, it's been talked about a lot that it's going to be one of the best running back free agency classes. And I mean,
they went quick,
they
like
real
quick.
Tony Pollard,
Swift was the first one, really after the legal tampering, going to the Bears. But like you just see these guys
first signing, wasn't he?
Yeah. Yeah. You just see these guys just flying off. And I'm like, damn, I wasn't expecting it because of how many there were. I wasn't expecting it to be like that. But I mean, it was, good for them. Good. And then it's not legislative. I mean, a couple of them were like 2 years, which are technically 1 year. But it wasn't like 1 year contracts and like they'll approve it deals. Like these are guys that are going out. So a couple of them got 3 year deals, a 4 year deal for Josh Jacobs. So I mean, it's like, okay, like good for y'all. I know, we could talk about Saquon, Chris going to the Eagles. That's probably the biggest, outside of Derrick Henry, the biggest running back acquisition that, pretty much happened. What were your thoughts on Saquon initially when you first found out?
It was a fucking shocker, because I mean, if we go by the GM Howie Roseman track record, I mean, he don't really play running backs at all. But like Shai said earlier, the numbers sound good and gaudy, but those are mostly agent-driven numbers to put out there, saying, hey, he's making this upward amount because this actual coming year, he's only making, his base salary is only like $2 million. Like, our starting core is less than $40 million under of cap space this whole year. That's Jalen, Devontae, AJ, and Saquon. That's less than Daniel Jones getting paid this year. That's less than Dak Prescott getting paid this year. So that stuff, it looks crazy because that's why, like, when I first saw it, like, damn, we paid him that much because that's not what he do. But I mean, I like it though. I fuck with it though.
It's a swing.
It's a swing.
It's a swing.
New coordinator, DeMarco Murray.
No.
Shades of DeMarco Murray.
Nah. Hell no. See, the difference is DeMarco Murray, we put him in a system that he does. That's not the system he would throw. Like Chip Kelly ran his own scheme. He a downhill power running back. That shit was never gonna work. But we're gonna see.
We're gonna see.
Definitely gonna see.
I was excited to see that Saquon. There's a lot of interdivisional signings. People staying in the division this year, which is very interesting. So, those 2 games are going to be real, especially the one at MetLife Stadium. It's going to be real turned up because you know how Giants fans can get. So it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting for sure. I mean, my biggest one probably, of course, like I said, Derrick Henry to the Ravens, which was announced yesterday. I know you're excited about that shot because that's like your.
That should have happened in the middle of the season. They let Derrick Henry get his last few games in Tennessee, but unless he's hurt, because it seems like these Ravens running backs just get hurt for anything.
Yeah.
It's not only just everybody's been talking about the Lamar, Derrick Henry aspect. So I do think that, and really, if they stay healthy, you're probably going to be looking at your top 3 backs being Derrick Henry, Saquon Barkley, and Jonathan Taylor this next year, because having to worry about the threat of the run for these teams, it's going to be a problem. Like, it's going to be a serious problem, especially, people talk about Saquon not really having vision because he's trying to bounce everything. So we'll have to see how that changes. Same thing not with Derrick Henry, but, some people try to say the same thing about Jonathan Taylor sometimes as well. So we'll have to see a little bit about that. But Derrick Henry, it's going to be a fucking problem. It's going to be a problem because you got
But yeah, it's just like you said, Shai. It's like both, especially for the 2 teams that, received new running backs. Like for the Eagles, Saquon, he's the best player on New York Giants. He's looking at a stat box every time they on the field. And now it's like, well, you can't really do that. Now, same thing with Derrick Henry. He's always looking at the stat box of Tennessee. Are you really going to stack it trying to stop him and keep Lamar from
that red zone offense about to be crazy for the Ravens.
Nasty.
Like that's slick, unstoppable. If you really look at it, it's like, what the fuck do you do? They get another receiver in there, which they should. It could be.
They should. This is not going to happen, obviously. But I would have been. They could try to get a T. Higgins, a bigger receiver. That would be a place that I would put Keon Coleman too, if he could possibly go there. I don't know how good he's going to be, but if he is going to be, something solid, I would like to see him there. But talking about Lamar and talking about Derrick Henry, Keaton Mitchell, obviously he had a major leg injury and it was kind of nasty, but he was starting to come on last year as a rookie. So that if he
good change of pace,
if he's even, obviously maybe the first half of the season he might have to get right, but that Derrick Henry, Keaton, and Lamar is going to be
that's nuts. That's nuts.
It's going to be a problem. But and on top of that, you got Tony Pollard. He went back home to Tennessee. So that'll be interesting to see as well. Tennessee, obviously, they're trying to put some offense around Will Levis this year. That was another thing. We talked about it last week. I said, I feel like a lot of these rookies or these teams with rookie quarterbacks are going to start making some moves. The probably 2 most active teams have been, or at least some of the most active signings have been Houston and
Tennessee.
And then the Colts have been active too. They've just been actively re-signing everybody. And obviously they just got Joe Flacco. But just in terms of spending money, signing contracts, those have been the 3 most active teams. And I will say that it's a good, it should be a confidence booster for Will Levis that they're going all in and trying to put as much around him to have him be successful. But who do you guys have think have been maybe, whether it's the biggest winner in free agent or who's your favorite signing? What's a signing you don't like? What are your thoughts?
It's funny that you mentioned that because I didn't really initially. I didn't really like the Tony Pollard signing for them. I will have to see how it turns out, of course. But the match between him and Tajay Spears is kind of
a little interesting.
It's a little redundant in some ways. It's interesting to see how it shakes out because Tony Pollard, you're not going to just use him as a first 2 down back and then switch to Tajay on third. It'll be interesting to see how they do it. But as far as winners, you brought up the other team, Houston. I thought they were a huge winner. And it's like you saw what you had last year, of course, with CJ. So it's like, all right, let's make our moves, let's start competing. But you go and make a trade, you bring in Joe Mixon, he's still got a little bit left in the tank. You re-sign Dalton Schultz, give him that good safety net. You bring in Danielle Hunter after losing Jonathan Grenard, which is huge because for a while it was like, oh shit, they lost, Will Anderson's running mate. Then you bring in somebody that has how many sacks he had last year? 17, 16 and a half sacks or whatever it was. So it's like, damn, all right. Man, I thought Houston really swung for the fences. You re-sign Desmond King, you bring in Jeff Okudah on a see what you got contract. They really swung for it. So Houston was my biggest winner, I would say. And they're looking good going into the draft. Because really you go into the draft trying to, now you can really focus on, what you want to improve on instead of like actual needs and stuff like that. So
about you, Chris?
I don't know about as far as biggest winners. One of the most interesting one was just the trade of Brian Burns. Because just to know that you could have gotten way more than what you got from him this year, and you decided to wait to now. It just made me question the Panthers every day. Like, what are y'all really? What are y'all goals? What are y'all aiming for? That one to me was kind of interesting and weird at the same time. So that's the one I should say that stuck out. But I mean, I want to piggyback on Kaz. I mean, Houston, they love what they saw last year. Clearly they felt like, hey, they had a chance, and if they make these few changes and they going, I don't know. I wouldn't say this is an all-in type of ordeal, but it just feel like they feel like they got it. They here. They can go for it. So I really do. I do fuck with most of the moves that they made.
Yeah. Overall surprise.
I would throw my team in there, but I ain't trying to be just homer. But
Nah, I feel you. I would have did that too. I'm a little surprised about the guards, their interior offensive linemen, and like the prices that they signed for. I wasn't expecting that. I didn't think it would be as robust as they're kind of making it seem. Especially with some of these guys that are like Robert Hunt to the Panthers, which I get the Panthers are just trying to shoot for. Fuck it, we got money. Let's just bring somebody in to protect Bryce. But to give him a 5-year, $100 million deal on surface, it's like, oh shit. You're like, okay, Robert Hunt is not. He's good. Is he that good? I don't know. It's like, so I found that surprising. Like the guards.
I think the biggest change in that is the quick game, trying to get the ball out quick. Specifically for the Panthers, obviously Bryce Young is a little slight. He's a little shorter quarterback, so making sure that the interior line is fortified is more so that he's not getting crushed and having guys getting right back into him. Yeah. But I think that's why we're seeing such a change for the guards and stuff like that. But also like if you really think about it, it probably shouldn't be as much of a surprise because, the Eagles obviously have had a standard of having a great offensive line. And that's I feel like more so than anything, that's pretty much what's helped them not be one of those teams that's ended up bottoming out. They might have one bad season, but it's not a consecutive thing where they're just, that was one of the reasons the Colts were much improved this year as opposed to last year, even though, some people might think Gardner Minshew is not as good as Matt Ryan. And, some people didn't know some of the players on the squad and stuff like that. The Chiefs, that's something that's not talked about enough. Even that we talk about their receivers all the time. Chiefs had a really good offensive line last year. So that's something else. And the Falcons, they might feel like, hey, we're not, we haven't necessarily bottomed out, even though we haven't necessarily been on the top end either. But their offensive line has been good.
It's stabilizing.
That's been able to keep them in games. That's been able to help their run game and stuff like that. So, it's probably something that, we shouldn't be that surprised about. Even the Vikings, when they had their great season, was really when their offensive line was having a good season. O'Neal and Darisaw kind of broke out those seasons too. So, we probably shouldn't be too surprised, but it was, like you said, it was like, damn, when you first see it, you're like, damn, this nigga's like what's going on? But honestly, my favorite signing was the Burns, a couple of my favorite signings trades really have been the trades. The Brian Burns, I think, going to the New York Giants, while they're going to have to figure out their quarterback position, and obviously they lost Saquon, the receivers, we still don't really know. I'm sure we're thinking that they're going to get one this year in the draft, or at least a couple, but we really don't know what that's going to look like. But for that D line, Kayvon Thibodeau, Dexter Lawrence, and Brian Burns immediately becomes a problem. Yep. I mean, it immediately becomes a problem for any and every team, especially if they keep saying that turf is disgusting up there in MetLife. So that was one of my favorites. I love to see Carlton Davis going to the Lions. Obviously Snead has been the prize cornerback that this offseason. I honestly think that Carlton Davis is probably better than LaJarius Sneed, in my opinion. And the Lions were able to do that swiftly. They don't have to sit here and wait on, whatever's going on with Sneed and what the Chiefs decided to do.
And that was for a third, right? Or four?
Yeah,
it was third.
They sent picks also as well. They sent like a fifth and a sixth, and
back.
Carlton Davis, and then they got a third. So, and then finally, Deontay got it. I like Bryce Young. I think Bryce Young has gotten the raw end of a stick to begin last year. I mean, with ownership, with Frank getting fired, they had a lot going on. So I think that him getting a receiver that he's probably been going through his trials and tribulations, because he might feel like, yo, I'm better than a lot of these dudes think that I am, but I had been with his weak ass arm towards the end of his career. I had Mitch Trubisky, then Kenny Pickett, and Mason Rudolph, who also went to Tennessee. So Will Levis, watch out. But that I'm good. I think for both of them, both of those players at least, it's a win-win. I don't know so much about Dante Jackson if he's going to be necessarily happy to go over to Pittsburgh, but I do think that those are probably my favorite ones. And then in terms of something that I didn't like, I honestly don't like the Joe Mixon to Houston. I don't think that he's going to fit in terms of how they run. I honestly, Singletary ended up going to the Giants, I believe. Singletary is a good bet. I think they're going to find the same issue that they found with Dameon Pierce with Joe Mixon. And, Joe Mixon did a lot of stuff. The Bengals do a lot of stuff from shotgun. He has a lot of runs from shotgun. It's completely different in Houston, where they're under the center. They're doing a lot of zone stretches and stuff like that. So that would probably be the one that I'm a little on. So, but aside from that, I mean, I think everybody's pretty much having a
decent offseason. Let's talk about the Packers.
No. Except for the Bills.
We'll get
except for the Bills. No.
You think the Bills are having a bad offseason?
Yes.
They had to do this shit.
I'm just saying, they losing a lot of players and they signing Matt Collins. That's not a good offseason.
Bruh, Matt Collins ain't going to do nothing. Matt Collins ain't going to do nothing.
Currently, they're number 2 because they lost Gabe Davis.
Yeah.
He's not their number 2. We obviously
currently he is.
Shakir, we saw what he did last year. Don't do that.
Now they sign Mike Williams, then I'll be quiet.
Here's the thing about the Bills, Chris, because like a lot of these guys on defense that you allude to losing, the safeties, Trey White, they ain't really play that much anyway. Over the last couple of years, they've been injured a lot. So you look at it like that, it's like, okay, you're just shedding off money that you needed to shed off anyway. And you're.
They got Von Miller to take a pay cut or restructure, so that was good for them. They did end up locking up their left tackle and kind of finish up solidifying. They made some trades to solidify their offensive line. Another thing that we're probably going to see here, they're the team that's been rumored to get Eric Armstead. So, they get Eric Armstead, things shift real quickly. But but you said the Bills. We should look more down south. That Jacksonville Jaguars. It's looking.
They trash too.
It's very early. We don't know how the draft is going to look after having they made what we think is going to be a good signing at defensive coordinator. And we can kind of segue this into our AFC South preview that we're doing today as well. So we can go ahead and start with the Jacksonville Jaguars. Like I said at the top of the show. What we came off when we started the show, we were just getting this news that Calvin Ridley is going to the Tennessee Titans, so staying in division but switching to a rival. And I mean, after even though it was only a third, giving up a third for a 1-year rental is not a good look.
A third and a fifth.
A third and a fifth. Especially when they were moving like they thought they knew they had it in the bag. That's how they were moving, because if you really think about the signings, they end up signing Gabe Davis. They end up signing Devin Duvernay. So you can assume that Devin Duvernay is probably like a 4, like he's been. No disrespect to Devin Duvernay. Gabe Davis, he can kind of slot on that deep threat, which he was with Buffalo, while you have Christian Kirk man in the inside, in the slot and the inside and stuff like that. Calvin Ridley is your dominant number 1, and then you lose that. So now it's a lot of redundancy where you have Gabe Davis and Zay Jones together and Devin Duvernay. And outside of that, I thought they were having some good signings because obviously, I like Mac Jones more than y'all do, so we'll see about that. But that's not gonna happen. But Mitch Morse, getting him from Buffalo, I thought was a really good pickup at center. Darnell Savage, I've always liked Darnell Savage when he was with the Packers. Obviously, they ended up getting a great. You said let's talk about the Packers and mention them. Josh Jacobs, great signing. Xavier McKinney, fantastic signing in my opinion.
Yes.
So two splashes that they made. Jacksonville. I was gonna say, they went 9-8 last year. We know how I felt about them coming into the season. We know how I felt about Trevor Lawrence, but even I didn't think it was gonna right now. How do y'all feel about the outlook? Before I say how I feel about the outlook,
no, this is trending on bottoming out. They took that gamble, which they weren't going to, and we talked about it, of course, before the stipulation with the Calvin Ridley trade. They weren't going to give him an extension. If anything, they were just going to re-sign him after 4:00 or whatever. They took that gamble, and this is exactly why you don't take the gamble. You know what I mean? This is the exact situation that they're in now. It's like, oh well, shit. Okay, we wanted to keep that third. We keep our second and give only the third, but at what cost? You know what I mean? They still haven't gave Josh Allen a contract. Of course, they put him on the franchise tag, but they still haven't, re-signed him fully to a new contract, which is still up in the air. Like, what's going to happen there? Especially after how last season ended, and even more questions about your quarterback. Honestly, it's not trending in the right direction that we thought a couple of years ago that this team was going in, which is a big problem.
I mean,
Go ahead, Chris.
it's not looking good. I mean, they in the same boat as Tennessee, really. I mean, at this point, I mean, if we just look at it from last year, Houston, we seen that they had a dominant season, with a rookie quarterback, so we expect them to get better. If we project Anthony Richardson to be better than Gardner Minshew, then the Colts should be better than what they were last year. I mean, Tennessee. Do you like Will Levis? Yes, no. We don't know what we're gonna talk about them in a second. But I mean, Jacksonville haven't did anything to show that hey, we're here. Like this should last year was the opportunity that they had to take over and say this is our division now. We should run this division. We got two rookie quarterbacks and a quarterback that was a veteran that ended up getting benched for a rookie quarterback. That should have been your time. And they didn't take full advantage of it, and it just their move that they're making so far, it's not moving the needle for me. So they really third place if we keep it in a buck right now. They really fighting for third for real.
They could be fighting for fourth for real. They really could be fighting for fourth. But it's just like I said, it could be it's a big season for Trevor Lawrence. It's a huge season for Trevor Lawrence because obviously he's about to go into when we're going to start having that contract talk. And for everything that people expected of him, people have been saying about him, no matter if you're his biggest supporter, no matter, I know some people like to say, like, look at all these throws that were dropped and all these stuff,
Oh, the Prince.
I get it. They did have some tough drops where his stats might have looked better, but at the end of the day, 8 losses over the season, your quarterback, everybody thought that it was the easiest division. It was a shoo-in for the Jacksonville Jaguars. And, Trevor Lawrence was about to ascend. They were talking about Trevor Lawrence being a top 3 quarterback. Does anybody think Trevor Lawrence is a top 10 quarterback right now? Is it a guarantee? You might think he is, but is it a guarantee? I don't know about that. And then now you don't necessarily have your number one like we thought they were going to have. Obviously they thought that Christian Kirk wasn't the number one. No disrespect to Christian Kirk, even though they signed him to a great contract, they obviously went and got Calvin Ridley for a reason.
Yeah.
So it's a little, and it brings me to this question. Who do you guys think in the first round now that, some things have shaked out? Obviously, we have a lot more free agency to go through. What do you guys think that they should be targeting for their first pick?
What's their position? 17?
17.
Yeah, 17.
That's interesting. Shit. I mean, it's a deep receiver class. They need to go receiver, honestly.
You could go receiver at 17. The one that might be available maybe is if he slides past y'all shot is BTJ, Brian Thomas Jr. Who would be, I think he has the potential to be that number one option that you're looking for, and drawing up plays for with Gabe Davis, drawing, taking, defenders out and being that deep threat. It could work like that. But of course, you got a new defensive coordinator in there with Ryan Nielsen. He might try to swing for a corner. I don't know. I think it's a possibility. I don't really know who all will be available at that spot, but you're right in the thick of when you start looking at the top three corners come off the board at 17, whether you're looking at a Terrion Arnold or a Quinyon Mitchell or
Nate Wiggins,
Ray Straw, somebody like that. So
they just lost Rayshon, right?
They cut him.
They cut him. My bad. Yeah.
So I think it'll be between one of those two positions, receiver or corner. They could go edge too, but I think it'd be receiver or corner.
That's also what I have. If they do go edge, that's another indictment on what they've been doing because you drafted, my boy, Trayvon Walker.
Yeah.
You drafted him number one overall.
Oh, yeah, that's a bad look. Nah, they can't go edge.
It's already been a bad look. It's already been a bad look because they were the one that was heavily, thought. They were originally the heaviest rumored team for Danielle Hunter. Even into last season that they were trying to trade for him. I think they might have been in on Sweat too, but just because they were going to have to risk, probably sign a better.
Terrible.
So it's like everything about with number one with the Trayvon with Josh Allen has just been handled poorly because they still haven't signed Josh Allen. If they would have signed Josh Allen, who knows? They could have franchised Calvin Ridley. He didn't have to sign the franchise tender, so they wouldn't have lost that second round pick, and everything would be a lot different now. But and then their GM being Trent Baalke, obviously he's put together some, a pretty good roster. But if you guys remember, he was the one that was getting into it with Jim Harbaugh with the 49ers. And he was ultimately the reason that they ended up breaking up. So that's something to continue to watch as well. But cornerback and receiver is also what I went with. We'll talk about it later when we talk about the Colts, which, I mean, honestly, we can do it next. I think the Colts are you can probably put it in pencil.
Positions.
It's going to be – I don't think they're not going to get a corner. It's not going to happen. Too many young guys in the cornerback position. They're going for a vet. It's going to be Snead. It's going to be Snead, Fuller, it's going to be somebody. It ain't going to be a rookie corner, and not in the first round at least. But I think you can pretty much pencil in it's going to be Brock Bowers or Brian Thomas to the Colts, whether they trade up or not. So that is going to be a key point to watch, like who
gets past 15.
Not even who gets past 15. What are the Colts and the Jacksonville Jaguars going to do in terms of looking for a trade up? Because I think they're going to be competing with each other. So it's tough. It's looking, obviously, no Super Bowls are won in fucking March. So, we can say a lot of shit and all of a sudden they start making some moves in the draft. And we're like, oh, okay, Jacksonville, you're doing something. But that's right now that's probably the team, if any team, I would say in this division that I'm like the most skeptical of. But moving to the Colts, obviously they were another team that went 9-8. Both Jacksonville and the Colts had the same record. Colts, they have not made. Well, they've had a free agent signing. We just saw that. We learned they got Joe Flacco. They got Raekwon Davis from a nose tackle from the Miami Dolphins to be a backup for Grover Stewart, who they re-signed. Like I said earlier, they re-signed Pittman. They re-signed Kenny Moore. They re-signed our punter, Grove Stewart. Obviously, another addition, quote unquote, is Anthony Richardson coming back into the fold. Hopefully he stays healthy. In terms of that outlook for the Colts and where you think they would go in the draft, what do you guys think they should do?
Hold on. Why do y'all think they're going receiver? I mean, y'all have 3 good receivers, right?
We have 3 good receivers, 3 young receivers, but Alec Pierce, he's in a position where he's stuck between, obviously Pittman just signed his contract. Josh Downs they think is a dog for sure.
Yeah.
And then, it's going to be hard to sign them. And then just having more weapons for Anthony Richardson. It's like I
So
said.
that I would agree with the Brock Bowers. I just, for whatever reason, I don't see y'all getting. Brock Bowers would be a good pickup as far as adding a weapon, but as a receiver, I just feel like it's just too crowded for y'all right now, especially with you having signing Pittman. And you have two younger guys on the team already.
Yeah.
I feel like it's kind of crowded. I can understand not wanting to get a corner first round, even though y'all need a corner, but I can see Brock Bowers though. That'd be tough because that'd be a good ass security blanket for Anthony Richardson.
One more thing to mention is Chris Ballard. Every time he does his end of year or his combine, he says a lot of like fluff. He doesn't give a lot of answers, but when he does talk about certain positions, you can kind of pick up where they're leaning. And if you go look at any of his interviews from the past years, if he talks about him in that interview, 9 times out of 10, they're picking either getting that position multiple times in the draft or doubling down in free agency in the draft. It's going to be touched. Pause. But I don't like how that sounded. But he's mentioned multiple times this offseason of getting weapons, getting a big adding more speed, getting weapons. So,
and that's what I've seen too, especially from like even. You look at the insiders and what they think the Colts would do at 15. Because it's all falling in that range. And I think mainly I thought of it as, okay, you got Alec Pierce who's going into his 3rd year. He hasn't been terrible, of course, but he hasn't shown like, okay, I'm that guy. You know what I mean? I'm not. Yeah. So I think you can stand to improve that. And the best way, especially after paying Michael Pittman, the best way to do it will be through the draft instead of trying to bring one in and sign one.
One more thing ironically, the game that probably like set that off is the Colts Falcons game where Pittman right before he regressed in his concussion protocol, and it was the opportunity for Josh Downs and really more Alec Pierce than Josh Downs because obviously he was a rookie, for him to like do something.
All right, now, yeah.
Obviously you got I don't want to give Alec a bad rap because he hasn't necessarily had the quarterbacks that maximize his skill set, but he's just in a tough position.
He is. I mean, last year was tough because you got Matt, and he's a deep threat, and it just it is tough for Alec.
Matt couldn't get that. Matt
ain't getting that out there. Matt ain't getting that shit out there. But what did you have, Chris? But if you didn't have receiver, you had what position you have for the Colts?
I'll say Brock Bowers, unless you count
Brock Bowers.
Unless you count that as a weapon. If you count that as a weapon, then I like to go. I like to add another edge rusher for y'all, man. I mean, I don't know. It gives the thought of, even though it gives a thought of like Shane Steichen coming from just being in the Eagles organization, and I see a lot of parallels of building the line and investing in O-line and investing in D-line. So I see why not. I mean, that's still a good position. There's plenty of edge rushers there. I don't think you would be reaching if you were to grab an edge rusher at that point.
I think that's a good spot for an edge rusher as well.
That's what you're going with, Cass?
I'm going with receiver.
Okay.
BT. I'm going with Brian. I think he falls. I think he ends up going to y'all at 15.
Edge, I would like. So going back to the corner, we can start there. So right now, the Colts started 2 rookie corner. Well, obviously Kenny Moore, he starts in base and then he goes and pushes to the slot when they go nickel. But they started 2 rookie corners the entire season. Juju Brents was taken in the 2nd round last year. Another corner that we had was a young guy. He was a 2nd-year player in Dallas Flowers, and he ended up getting tearing his Achilles, but he was playing well as well. And then the 7th round pick that they had, Jalen Jones, he was really good the entire season up until like the last 2 games or so. So bringing in another young corner in when you already have 3 guys that are in their first 2 seasons, it's just not. They're just not going to do it. On top of that, in the back end, right now, without having Blackman re-signed, our safeties are also third-year players. So it's just not going to happen. We're getting. I mean, I'm not going to say we won't draft a corner at all, but first 2 rounds, I just don't see it. As far as the edge rusher, that was that. I would like to, coming off the years of Dwight Freeney, Robert Mathis, you always can go and get an edge rusher. But the Colts actually did break their franchise sack record last year. And they fired their D-line coach because they felt that their D-line was good enough, but it should be better, like in terms of consistent pressure. So I do think they're going to bank more on the guys that they have. And then Kwity Paye, he's going into his 5th year. Dio Diengbo, he really has come on over the past few seasons, or towards the end of the season. He drafted him and he had a torn Achilles. So I think over the last 17 games, he's had 12 sacks. So I mean, he's also breaking out a little bit for us. So I will, if Dallas Turner's there, I don't know if I would go with Jared Verse because he's kind of like a Kwity Paye in terms. I honestly think that might even be his comp on some of these websites. So like I said, I'm going receiver. If Brian Thomas or Brock Bowers isn't there, I think they're 100% trading down. And then from there, who fuck knows what they're going to do. But I think they're going, no question, I think it's going to be one of those 2 guys. Unless Falcons trade down and there's Neighbors or Dunze up there, which I doubt. So, but moving to the next team, moving to the last 2 teams, the most active teams, like we said in free agency so far. We can start with the Tennessee Titans. We've talked about it. This is the 4th time I mentioned it. Calvin Ridley, right before we signed on, huge contract, 4 years, about $23 million. Which I don't know about that, not that long, but they got Tony Pollard, signed Mason Rudolph as well. Lloyd Cushenberry comes over from Denver. They got Kenneth Murray coming from the Chargers, and then Cheeto Awuzie at the cornerback position coming from the Bengals. Obviously, with Callahan coming from the Bengals as well, we'll probably see some, similar signings, some guys from the Bengals, from the Browns. But they've got pick 7. They've got pick 7 this year. They've obviously invested in Calvin Ridley. They obviously invested in D-Hop last year. Tony Pollard. They also have a backup running back, and then Treylon Burks as well. So seems like they're pretty set, at least on the weapons side of things. Where do you guys see them going on in pick 7?
I think this sets up perfectly. I think they designed it like this to go with a tackle. I really just don't see them. Before this Calvin Ridley trade, it was like, okay, they could swing for a receiver, get a young receiver in there for Will. But at this 7th spot, and they still might, I think they'll still draft the receiver later on. But I think they go tackle at that number 7 spot. And you have the possibility of getting one of the top tackles, top or top 2 at least, at that 7th spot. So whether that is Joe Alt, Fuaga's more of a run blocker, I feel like. But I feel like if Joe Alt is there, that's the spot where he'll find success. So I think tackle is where they go.
Say you, Chris?
He had a great combine too.
I think they're gonna go defense. I know you just said they got a Awuzie, but I could see them getting a corner. I could see them reaching and getting a corner on defense. It's just weird. It's a weird situation for them because for you to sign D-Hop and then turn around and sign Calvin Ridley for the contract you signed is like, are you trying to get young? What are you trying to do? Because I mean, in my opinion, Calvin really didn't really show enough for me to last year to justify you giving him this big ass contract, especially at the age he's in. And so it's like, what are you really trying to do? All right, but I mean, I would go corner if I was them, honestly.
That early?
Fuck it.
So I actually offensive lineman would also. In our mock draft, I went with the I believe I went with O-line in the mock draft. But now that they've made all the signings, and like you said, first off, let me piggyback off of your point about do they want to go young or do they not? It's been reported that the entire reason that Mike Vrabel left and there was so much animosity is supposedly between him and Carlin, the GM, was because they couldn't, or like he wanted to go continue to compete and like try to go like they were a title contender, and Rand was the one that wanted to scale back and go young. So it's a little, some mixed signals going on there. But I think they're a prime trade down candidate, honestly, because they do need some DB help. While they do need all of offensive line help as well, bringing over Bill Callahan, Brian's father, who's supposed to be a guru in terms of building his offensive line. We've seen that with Cleveland over the past few years. I can see them being like, it's a deep class. We can get some guys later on, maybe not later on, but we can get some guys at the top of the second round or something like that. And then, like you said, we go ahead and get a cornerback, and then maybe it's a spot where Minnesota trades up and they're like, hey, you only trade down, 4 spots from 4 or 7 to 11.
Yeah.
You pick up another pick, we get our quarterback, and you guys get – that would be a position where you could see a Terrion Arnold or Mitchell go. And so that's probably what – as of today, I'd probably go ahead and say they'll be a trade down candidate.
Okay. That makes sense.
And then finally, we got the Houston Texans, the division winners. Obviously, they had the offensive rookie of the year, made it to the second round of the playoffs, took a tough loss against the Ravens. But we talked a little bit about their two biggest acquisitions, which was Daniil Hunter and Joe Mixon. My personal favorite, a little bit of a homer here, but Danico Autry, I think he's going to actually be the prize free agent for them. Just from his interior rush and how good he is. They also got Azeez Al-Shire. But they've kind of put themselves in a position similar to the Tennessee Titans where they can truly do the best player available. They obviously traded one of their picks over to the Cardinals last year when they got Will Anderson. But, this year they're still reaping the benefits of the Deshaun Watson trade. So they have Cleveland's pick at 23. Where do you see them going?
That shit crazy. That shit crazy.
They set themselves up good, man. I mean, it's really the Browns, man. The Browns are the Browns. But yeah, like you said, man, best player available at this spot. It's hard to say who that will be at this point in time. I could see them possibly going for a corner at 23. I could see them. You know what? I'm just going to say corner. I'm going to just ride that one. I think 23, I think they'll be in a position to get one of those top 3 corners. Very possible. I feel like they will shoot for that to kind of give Stingley a running mate.
Mm-hmm.
Who you got, Chris?
What say you, Chris?
One under, like you were saying about Danico Autry, Al Shazier, that's an underrated signing too because he played up under DeMeco Ryans when he was in San Francisco. So that's actually a great ass pickup. At that position, I don't know.
It's tough when you start getting down there.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, at that point, it's like it's almost like they done addressed everything they could possibly address so far, and it's like
you just gotta see how the board goes.
You just adding depth at this point, yeah. But I can see them adding maybe an old lineman, possibly even another receiver. At this point, we got film on CJ Stroud, so at this point, their focus need to be keep building him up, because the old saying of the second sophomore slump or whatever the case may be. This is the time where it's like, hey, we need to get him everything he needs, protection, whatever the case may be. So I think they might go offense, honestly.
And that honestly makes sense. That makes sense in terms of like trying to get him everything he needs because they're going, it's inevitably going to happen. And I'm just going to give you guys a preview. They're probably going to be in the same position, in my opinion, as Jacksonville next year.
I want to say they could probably
they're all but assuredly about to be the media darling in terms of dark horse Super Bowl. Texans, dark horse Super Bowl. So I can honestly, see. I'm not going to say it for sure, but I can honestly see their season going a lot like how Jacksonville did this past season because there are, when you are building a team and you do have success like they do, you do sometimes accelerate your timeline a little bit. One thing that I did like about the Danielle Hunter signing is they didn't lock it in for a long time. It's only 2 years.
2 years.
So that to me kind of screams that they're like, we know that we need to make a splash, but we also don't want to hinder ourselves from, hurting our future. So I really like that, which is why I'm thinking that if, that would be a reason that they're not like Jacksonville, because it seems like they're doing a little bit smarter. But and like I said, man, Danico Autry is a freaking fantastic. You want to talk about him, Danielle Hunter and his sack total. I mean, Danico Autry last year had 11.5 sacks. The year before, 8 sacks with Tennessee. The year before, 9 sacks. And then when he was with the Colts, he had a 7.5, 3.5, and 9 sacks. So, I mean, he's been super productive, very, very underrated a player over the past few years. So I'm really excited to see him. But they're another team that could possibly be a trade down candidate. But I agree with Cass. That's a position that I think they should go ahead and get a running mate from Stingley. I think last year, in my opinion, Stingley showed out. It's obviously Sauce is going to be the comp against him because they were drafted in the same draft class, and Sauce obviously started off with back-to-back All-Pro seasons. But I honestly think that Stingley was a little better last year. So getting somebody,
Stingley, unfortunately for him, he was injured, man. He
had to come back to get right.
Yeah. So
even though he got mossed by Likely, but I'm gonna hold that down. But no, I'm just talking shit. But I do think they go corner, and I also think that a sneaky position is edge rusher because, like I said, Danielle Hunter's only there for 2 years. Maybe, and he's obviously had an injury history. Was out for the season with the neck. Was out for the season. I can't remember what the second injury was that had him out for the season. But so that is something to watch as well. So I could see them going corner or edge rusher. But they have been rumored a lot, for a receiver. Nico Collins is coming up for he's due for a signing, and they might sign him this offseason. So we don't know how Tank is going to look coming off of his injury. So I could see them going receiver, going sneaky, be in the sneaky position for them, maybe in the second round. Yeah. So
it's gonna be interesting for them, but I do agree with you. They about to be the media darlings. On God,
they're definitely about to be
for
the
sure.
media darlings.
There's about to be some crazy takes going into the season next year for Houston, which is
expectation is about to be something serious. That's why earlier in the episode I started off all those teams. I mean, I've been hype about the Colts and saying, fucking Anthony Richardson's there. They might be top 3 seed. That could have been a possibility, but like I said, all those teams got to temper that last year. That schedule was very, very light. And, we played I feel like all the teams, at least in the AFC South, they were playing nothing but backup quarterbacks the entire season. So it's going to be interesting. But, we went, shit, man. We were, 0 for 3 for signings that we thought was going to happen?
Yeah, it was a little rough. I mean, but... Well, for you, at the same time, though, we were kind of on the same path. Mooney was definitely talking to the Chiefs.
Yeah.
Hunter,
I was sick. I was like, oh.
Yeah, Hunter was talking to the Falcons.
Yeah.
So I mean, it and Chris, we'll still see what happens. But it looked like Snead's still staying.
Snead playing, bro.
Yeah.
They trying to fleece y'all. They
are trying to fleece.
That last report that we saw, I felt like was pretty telling. Like it's like, the Colts probably got this one
on top of the Pat. Restructure.
And I think that they did the Pat restructure to kind of be like, we might sign him.
Yeah, we might keep him. Like, don't play. Come correct.
I think 100%. There was a report. What we're referencing, there was a report that came out that there are some teams monitoring, but some of those teams also think that he might go back to the Chiefs. Yeah. The end of the report said that the thought is the Colts are the leader in the running right now and the team to beat. Knowing the Colts, because I'm a fan, I just fucking read about them all the time. They're not a team that moves past their, with whatever price they set, they're sticking with that, and that's that. So what that read to me is the Colts probably have the best offer out right now, and they're trying to see, trying to float that out so other teams might make a jump. But and then even then, I don't know if y'all paid attention, but it was the Tennessee Titans were heavily rumored for Snead as well. I think that It was like, hey, Colts, you got somebody in your division that's trying to make some moves. So we'll see how that goes. I want my boy Lattimore, but if we get Snead, I'm cool with it too, I guess. So, but before we sign on, we still got, this is the first day. We're not even 24 hours into,
seriously.
We talked about hella signings, but we're not even 24 hours into the legitimate free agency. By this time next week, is there any, we've got some good folks still out there, Justin Simmons, obviously Snead, some other players that are still out. Who is the surprise signing that you guys would think by this time next week?
Surprise. I mean, I
or
think
just
by
signing in general.
I think by the end of the week, Justin Simmons is going to be signed somewhere. Where? I mean, it sounded like he's going to the Titans. To be honest with you, he might be the Titans. So, but I definitely think by the end of this week, he's gone. He's signed somewhere.
The tough part for Justin is that you look around and you still got Cameron Curl, you still got Julian Blackman, Jordan Fuller.
That's the thing about this year.
Micah Hyde, you still got Eddie Jackson.
These positions, they've been very, very deep with very, very good talent. Like we were just talking about running back position earlier. All these running backs that were out there, they had good years last year in general. And then you got the safeties, like you just said. So that's going to be interesting.
Yeah, because I would have thought Cameron Curl would have been scooped up by now, but
it's not just Cameron Curl. I mean, there's some other guys. Kendall Fuller at corner.
At corner, yeah.
Obviously, Mike Williams just got released, so there's going to be. He's probably going to be the guy that we're talking about next week. So I don't want to necessarily go with him, but we got a lot. Hollywood Brown has been rumored to the Chiefs heavy. Stephon Gilmore is still out there. Chase Young, edge rusher that hasn't really been talked about a lot at all. He's starting to do some
those visits or whatever.
I think he's taking the smart route.
Old free agency route where you go and meet with teams.
But honestly, those are the teams that do that wait out that first wave, wait out that the initial let's get out, because obviously when you're seeing a signing like DeAndre Swift be the first one, 2 minutes after the tampering starts, they're probably just going a lot of times with. I'm assuming they're going with the best offer, a lot or close to the best offer with the most amount of money, but then maybe a good living situation. So, with that being said, the most of those teams that kind of take that approach, that don't just hop right in, they typically, I feel like, get better returns.
Yeah.
So I think Justin Simmons is a good one. I do think that we will see a Simmons signing soon. But I think we see Chase Young and the team that that we've been talking about. I think it's going to end up being Tennessee. I think Tennessee kind of continues their free agency tour that they're doing, the free agency frenzy, whatever you want to call it, and they're getting all that money out. So I think that Chase Young ends up in Tennessee.
Young and Jeffrey Simmons.
If Chase Young ain't out there selling,
I think that's one. I mean, well, they talked about that, so he been in my division or whatever. But that's one of the things they say he be freelancing a lot, and that's kind of why they wanted to get rid of him. And I think they floated it out there with a lot of teams, and that's why a lot of teams are not really, I guess you could say quick to sign him because of just him freelancing supposedly.
For me, I was kind of I wanted to see him shut all that shit up in the Super Bowl, kind of dominate that game, especially with the Chiefs tackles kind of struggling a little bit there. But he did. I think he did end up with a sack, maybe a sack and a half, and he still played a decent game. But it's his career it hinges a lot on what happens or where he decides to go. I don't know if we all agree on this, but I know I 100% thought he was better than Montez Sweat when they both got traded, and then Montez Sweat showed the fuck out. So he's immediately signed a contract, and you probably ask most people, they're like, "Oh, Chase Young's that dude. Like he's better than Montez Sweat. Blah blah blah. Second overall pick."
Yeah,
and now he's the one that's out here. Shit, he might end up
trying
being
to find
a one-year candidate.
Prove it deal.
Honestly, take the Jadeveon Clowney path. Jadeveon Clowney has been a guy that he was obviously drafted. What was he, number 1 overall? supposed to be this dominant guy. He's had a good NFL career. He hasn't necessarily had a great one, but over the past few years, he's just been 1 year. So maybe we start to see that with Chase.
I'll go with I don't really know who's going to step up and get Tyron Smith.
Excuse me.
At tackle. So
I don't rumor that it's Washington.
Yeah. So I don't really know about that one, but I'm gonna come on the left field one, Chris. It's for you. You asked for a linebacker. Go out and get a little tweener. Go out and get Isaiah Simmons. Keep him in the division.
Oh man, we should have did that shit last year.
I could see it. I don't think it's super ugly. I'm interested to see where he goes, though. I think he's still talented, but
him and Devin White still out there.
Yeah.
And then also freaking another position that they could look at is Micah Hyde. I mean, the Eagles got some moves to make. I mean, they ended up getting Chauncey Gardner-Johnson as well. We didn't really talk about that. People have been hating on that a little bit because they're like, how the hell you didn't sign him before, and now all of a sudden he got a pay increase off of missing half the season.
Timing is everything.
It is another one of them things. Is the up to.
Yeah, that's true too.
Yeah,
they said there's a lot. They said it's hella incentives in his shit, but
up to. But I mean, shit, he been eating, so I mean, we'll see. But that gives us a wrap for free agency frenzy. It's been a crazy past 3 days. It feels like it feels like it's something popping off every other minute. And then I was at work like, what the fuck going on? Like,
that's why I was like, man, I can't even focus.
Yeah, bro, for real. But we'll catch y'all next week. One more person before we sign off, Joey Bosa. They got to make a decision about him tomorrow. So that might be somebody we're talking about next week as well.
He can come to the squad.
I feel like he's going to end up with his brother. But
yeah, the rumors are 49ers are looking at him. They end up getting off of him, he would. That would be nasty.
I would hate that shit, bro.
That would be nasty.
That would be nasty, though. Them racist ass niggas.
Yeah.
Nah, I'm just talking shit. But actually, they trying to turn on Joe Burrow now. They saw him
with
Bosa.
Trump. Yeah, they're like, hold on now, Joe.
It's funny though, because Joe looking like he looking like, damn, I done lost all my credibility.
He's like, I know what's about to happen from this.
And then Nick Bosa on the side like, hell yeah.
They say he was the happiest day of his life, man.
He was cheesy. He got his thumbs up. I'm like, oh, this man happy as hell. He done met his idol.
That's crazy.
That's funny though, man. But we'll catch y'all next week for another episode of Speak Up Sports Podcast, man.
Yes, sir.